Greetings, everyone. It is GleeCon back again with another episode of your favorite show, Lore of Warcraft. On our last episode, we ran around in Warcraft Classic. We finished up the third round of questing with a human priest. I think it died at least 5 times just doing 2 quests. So killing a bunch of Defias, and that is what it is. We are very close to wrapping up all of Westfall, at least in the first round. Not counting the dead mines and the quest that'll take us back there. I think we have some around the Lightfall that we'll try to bust out. That'll probably be a bang our head against the wall kind of grind. That will be the next Alliance video we actually do. But I'll talk about that when we get there. We've also been reading the Horde Player's Guide. We just finished the 7th chapter where we talked about threats to the Horde from within and without. And we're going to just do a cursory kind of review of the 8th chapter. The first few pages, we will actually read them because it discusses different races and their military tactics. And then once it gets to the stat blocks, we'll just glance at it. Just stay a while and listen as we do chapter 8 of the Horde Player's Guide called Horde Military, and we'll start with Horde Tactics. The Horde can boast of many strengths in its army. What it lacks, and you see, he just waits right for me to start. What it lacks in mobility, it makes up for in sheer power. I swear. So if you could live my life, if you could be around, and those of you that watch every episode, I'm sure you are, he legit has not been doing this like for the past 6 hours. And even just now when I started my intro, but as soon as I get into the reading part, he starts spinning in circles with that tail. He 100% is screwing with me. Such a jerk. Such a jerk. All right. Just punctuation. Think of it like a gentle rain just drops, like staccato tapping on the tin roofs of a rainy day. Grunts and shock troopers such as Tauren are always the first to charge into battle, swinging axes and massive totems. The generals always charge with their troops. It isn't honorable to let those you command feel the rush of battle without you, not to mention it's rather dull. The Horde's blood sings for battle. The Horde's tactics are more blunt than the Alliance's. While many great generals do work on more refined tactics, the Horde focuses on overwhelming power. It's kind of like the, what's that alien race in StarCraft? The Zerg. You gotta be kidding me. Orc raiders tear paths through tough opposition, often leaping through the lines of battle to cripple stronger foes and create channels where raging death can flow. The Horde isn't known for its technology or ranged combat, but it does have elements of both. Troll axe throwers and headhunters dart through wooded areas, sniping at stray targets or flankers, while massive catapults rain death on closely cramped foes. Many siege engineers become reckless in battle, and friendly fire is a constant threat, not to mention goblins. Shaman function as both healers and artillery, calling on the forces of storm, earth, and fire. These spellcasters rend holes in enemies, weaken powerful opposing forces, and heal their allies. Masters of the Wild, the Horde is more likely to use animals rather than technological vehicles in battle. Mighty dire wolves or immense Kodo beasts serve better than the Alliance's siege engines, they claim, while dwarven flying machines have a hard time keeping up with wyverns and savage vampire bats. The intelligence of most of their beasts often saves riders trouble, as the mount can make instinctual decisions on its rider's behalf. Even the Horde's navy speaks of slow and powerful warfare. Troll destroyers and orc juggernauts rule the seas, raining flaming death on anything foolish enough to combat them. However, orcs do not have as strong a navy as they used to. The trolls left the Horde after the Second War, and humans put captured orcs into enslavement camps. The Alliance dismantled orc refineries and stripped their ships for parts. After the founding of Durotar and the alliance with certain troll and ogre tribes, the Horde's naval power grows once again. That's true, and I mean, just for the purpose of parity within the game, it's pretty much, you can, for all intents and purposes, treat it the same. The Forsaken. Forsaken almost never engage directly in physical combat and are perhaps the only forces of the Horde who think before charging. While physically powerful, the undead realize that they are frail creatures and know they can serve better in the shadows, but they can be warriors and tanks and stuff. When facing the Forsaken, enemies can expect to never actually see the undead masters themselves. Forsaken, like the Scourge before them, send waves of undead creatures, either summoned by necromancers or created by acolytes or alchemists, to battle. Occasionally, a necromancer or alchemist uses spells at range, cursing foes and softening them up for the inevitable onslaught of ghouls, skeletons, and abominations. That's sort of like the Zerg as well. They're like a mixture between Zerg and Protoss. Many Forsaken forces are led by Dark Rangers, the shadowy opposition of Elven Rangers. These former elves are just as deadly as ever with bows and command powerful curses as well. Forces led by a Dark Ranger are employed in strategic hit-and-run tactics, ambushes, and other trap-based plans. Half-Ogres. Half-Ogres are melee monsters, but melee is perhaps the lesser ability of this race. Most Mok'Nathal have a bond with nature that rivals the best of the Alliance's Night Elves. Most Half-Ogres have at least a modicum of divine abilities and can surprise unsuspecting forces. Half-Ogres can be seen as walking armies of their own. If a Half-Ogre hunter or Beastmaster is present in a force, expect to fight not only the powerful warrior himself, but the forces of nature. In just a moment, a Half-Ogre can more than double his worth by summoning wild beasts to fight alongside him. Generals often hide Half-Ogres among their smaller orc cousins, masquerading them as massive orcs, then order the Beastmaster to summon his friends and drastically increase his army. Half-Ogres rarely lead forces of their own, and few Half-Ogres mass together enough to become a force themselves. Instead, Half-Ogres, even Beastmasters, blend in with Orc or Ogre forces, lending their strength to their parents. And speaking of the parental form of the Orcs, let's look at Half-Orcs. More versatile than their Orc parents, Half-Orcs can fill any niche in an army. Most Half-Orcs work as spies and assassins for the Horde, or secondary shaman and priests. Real quick, let's talk about old friends. Goblins fought with the Horde in the Second War, but broke off when they realized that it's more profitable to work both sides. We know that will change. However, many goblins remember the fun of the Horde and are willing to lower mercenary prices to thrall in his people. Goblins offer almost exclusive transport services for the Horde, whether in their steamboats or zeppelins. You're more likely to find a team of goblin sappers who take great pleasure in the chaos the Horde creates meshed into Horde forces than those of the Alliance. Yeah, and I would say nowadays it's exclusive. Back to Half-Orcs. A Half-Orc in combat is a cunning and deadly foe, more intelligent than her Orc parents and more adaptable. Unaffected by Orc bloodlust, Half-Orcs are more adept to employ strategy in their assaults. Naturally, many generals are Half-Orcs. Their cool heads can make the difference between a battle and a slaughter. I mean, it would be cool to be able to play Half-Orcs, but like from a gameplay perspective, it wouldn't. I don't think it would be unique enough to, like, whatever. It's like the difference between a Mag'har Orc and a regular Orc. Like Ogres. Some of the most powerful creatures the Horde can muster. Ogres are even less subtle than Orcs. Ogres care little for well-laid plans and strategies, charging into combat and swinging clubs with the smallest provocation. Ever since the Second War, however, Ogres have been surprising armies. Deceptively intelligent leaders appear in Ogre warbands, hiding their great cunning behind ogreish ignorance. These warlords lead intelligent strikes, attacking food lines and isolating villages. They then wait for the village to weaken from hunger and lack of reinforcements and engulf the doomed people with an onslaught of charging ogres. The increase of intelligent ogre leaders worries many of the greater races of Azeroth, as generals now find it difficult to guess the capabilities of an individual ogre warband. Ogre magi bring magical power and intelligence to any army. These blue-skinned brutes combine the physical power of an ogre with the cunning of warlocks. When an ogre mage leads a warband, except to have a hard battle ahead of you, expect to. It's like he's galloping. Even the most brilliant ogres pale in comparison to the masterful intelligence of an ogre mage. Surgical strikes and magical traps are a few of the tactics ogre magi employ, especially rune trap spells placed in strategic locations. Orcs. Orcs are the backbone of any Horde army. Their peons are responsible for building and defending their strongholds, while their grunts and warriors are the basic infantrymen. Like humans, orcs fill many positions in battle, jack of all trades, but masters of none. While engaging in combat, bloodlust flows over orcs. They fly into blind and frightening rages, cleaving through foes with horrible axes. On Draenor, orcs tamed and rode dire wolves, and the cleaver-like blades of these raiders are just as deadly as any knight's lance. Orcs also borrow kodos from the Tauren, loading them with massive drums to inspire fear in their enemies, and ride swift wyverns to combat aerial units. Orc healers are almost universally shamans, summoning the elements of the world and charging into melee with massive claws of attack. Siege engineers manage powerful war machines, tearing swaths in enemy forces. Despite their roles, however, orcs insist on being in the front lines, and a wise general learns to balance the orcs' battle rage with cunning tactics. Few orcs are willing to sit on the sidelines unless promised a greater battle elsewhere. Orcs excel in melee, and a general should profit well by using them for this. Okay, we got a little bit more on this. Tauren. The massive Tauren are perhaps even more suited to melee combat than Orcs. From the greatest Tauren chieftain to the lowest totem-bearing warrior, Tauren exemplify the Horde's strength rivaled only by Ogres. However, where Ogres are simply walking tanks, Tauren are strong-willed and cunning. Tauren warbands use terrain to their advantage, setting pincer points, and driving enemy forces into dead ends where Tauren above can pelt their foes with stones and spears. Tauren are also powerful divine casters and often serve as healers and sources of support magic for their armies. Even the lowest Tauren offers respect to the spirit world, and followers of the totem can expect divine help when they need it. Many Tauren call upon the spirits as weapons, as do Orc Shaman, combining their fierce strength with divine might. A tribe's chieftain joins in battle alongside his forces. The presence of these massive, halberd-wielding creatures bolsters their troops, especially when they see the damage the chieftain inflicts. Tauren have bested many foes after an enemy fought the tribe to a standstill, then the Tauren chieftain rallied his forces and led them to victory. And finally, Trolls. Trolls, both the axe-throwing forest trolls and the spear-hurling jungle trolls, serve various roles in battle, but trolls are primarily ranged support, naturally proficient and deadly with all manners of thrown weaponry. Trolls favor stealthy attacks, perhaps with envenomed or cursed missiles, and practice guerrilla tactics. While trolls are about as prone to rages as orcs, trolls are more likely to set cunning traps, tricking foes into lowering their guard. Troll magic users prefer divine magic. Understandably, troll healers almost always follow the path of the witch doctor, supporting troops with powerful elixirs, potions, and totems. Many troll witch doctors and priests become shadow hunters, stealthy warriors blessed with the dark powers of the Loa. Trolls also fight from the air. These rare trolls tamed the volatile vampire bats of Zulaman and southern Kalimdor, convincing the bloodthirsty beasts to bear them into combat. Most troll bat riders are insane, willing to ride to battle bearing explosive elixirs simply to cause chaos. Okay, and let's read about the weak link. The Horde may seem to be an unstoppable juggernaut, but like the best laid walls, they have their weak points. In the past, these weak links kept the Alliance from losing the Second War. 1. They're savages. Perhaps its greatest weakness as a whole, the Horde is a group of primitive savages bound together by extreme circumstances. Subtlety is a 4-letter word to these guys, and most prefer to talk with their fists. Even the Forsaken are bloodthirsty and prone to violent rages, as well as an inherent distrust in anyone else. A cunning general can incite rages in a warband and laugh as the Horde's best-laid plans fall apart while the savages fly mindlessly into combat. They also have small forces. Despite their power, the Horde lacks the numbers it once enjoyed. They are the underdogs now, and it becomes easy to simply overwhelm their forces with greater numbers. Strength is good, but the many are stronger than the few. Technology. Similar to their savage weakness, the Horde severely lacks in technological prowess since the goblins left their alliance. The Horde's reliance on divine magic and beasts has proven a downfall due to their unpredictable and exhaustible nature. And technology still baffles the Horde. Enemy forces can overwhelm a Horde warband with a single siege engine. Most warbands are simply ill-equipped to handle a strong technological presence. Okay, and now we're going to switch over to the military forces, so we'll have a little kind of preview of that, and then it'll be all about stats. So we'll kind of fly through it at that point. Military forces. This section includes statistics for typical members of the Horde military. If you've played the Warcraft 3 computer game, so now we're beyond Brand Bronzebeard. We're not in story mode anymore. We're breaking the fourth wall. You've recognized many of the following individuals as units from that game. These are all individuals who have seen several battles at least, and thus are experienced soldiers. None of them is level 1 except perhaps some peons, although the Horde military undoubtedly includes some first-level recruits. The military forces here are divided into 2 broad categories, champions and soldiers. Kind of like the game, and sort of kind of like, what's that? The tower defense style game, the Heroes of the Storm, or whatever the World of Warcraft one is. The military forces here are divided, champions are generals, leaders, and other exceptional individuals. Many are former or current adventurers. They're powerful additions to an army and a force to be reckoned with on the battlefield. Each one is worth half a dozen or more common troops. Soldiers are those common troops. Most of them are career soldiers, but they're content to follow orders and work best when combined with units composed of other similar soldiers. Those presented here are veterans of at least a few battles. The forces presented here are further divided based on their race and allegiance as follows. Orcs. There's Beastmaster, Blademaster, Farseer, Elite Guard, Grunt, Kodo Rider, Peon, Raider, and Wind Rider. And possessions. In addition to the possessions listed in a champion's or soldier's description, all these characters are assumed to carry standard campaigning gear: backpacks, bedrolls, equipment for their mounts, flint and steel, pouches, ropes, rations, water skins, perhaps a smattering of coins and the like. The Tauren forces are the Chieftain, the Spirit Walker, and Warrior. The Jungle Trolls, there are Shadow Hunters, Bat Riders, Berserkers, Headhunters, and Witch Doctors. And the Forsaken have Dark Rangers, Acolytes, Apothecary, Bodyguards, and Necromancers. Before we get into the Orc military forces, let's read the Orc tale. Zug Zug, the peon said, and he began to hoist the catapult and put it into place. Doomhammer smiled and returned to his inspection. Lazy push dug, Narg Snarl said, coming to the general's side. Why do we tolerate the little chillbloods? Captain Snarl, would you like to set up our catapults without them? Snarl chuckled, but Doomhammer backhanded the officer with such force that he fell to the ground stunned. Captain Snarl, I order you to perform the tasks of a peon for 1 day, starting this very minute, Doomhammer shouted. But Doomhammer, if the Alliance attacks, Doomhammer raised his hammer. Yes, my lord, at once. Captain Snarl slunk away and reported to the peon master, informing him of Doomhammer's command. Suddenly, every peon within earshot broke into fits of hysterical laughter. Snarl was furious. I am still a captain, and when I am restored to rank, there will be bloody retribution. The peon master caught Snarl with a quick lash to his unprotected neck that made him yelp. Peons must learn their place, he ordered the peons to grab him, forcibly remove the captain's armor, and hold him to the ground. He allowed each peon Snarl had threatened a chance to kick him in the ribs. 6 hours later, Doomhammer came upon his captain, sweating and shaking in the mire, propped up with his back against a tree. The pits! They made me clean the pits, Snarl muttered in a mad voice. Doomhammer turned to the peon master. Has Peon Snarl performed his duties to your satisfaction? No, General. He could not assemble a catapult. He broke the Porter line's rhythm when he stumbled carrying shot. He was slow with his pickaxe at the quarry and only cleaned 2 of the pits before he refused to do any more work. And he still refuses to answer my orders with the word Zug Zug. Lazy push dog, Doomhammer spat. Flay him to your satisfaction. It was the last time any of Doomhammer's captains ever openly insulted his peons. Okay, so we're going to now talk about the specific Orc military forces. They're some of their typical Beastmasters and some of their generals. Beastmasters and Hunter companions, it says basically the GMs may allow Hunter and Beastmaster levels to stack. So there's a typical one would be Tagar Bearclaw. He's a 7-level Hunter, 6-level Beastmaster, so he's a level 13. He's pretty strong. It says they are noble savages. They're more home with wild animals than sentient beings, and they're mercenaries, but they only work for the Horde. So they give his stat block, and then he has a bear companion as well. Okay, so they give a description. The hulking warrior appears to be either a massive orc or a small ogre. He wears the hide of a bear, including a hood fashioned from its head, and wields 2 massive battle axes. A great bear rests at his side, ready to pounce at his master's order. Okay, so Blade Master, we have Moogle. It's like a Final Fantasy reference, maybe. 6th level warrior, 10th level gladiator, so he's strong. Moogle the Sly, they are formerly part of the Burning Blade clan, but now they are free from demonic corruption, and they try to serve by example. The orc moves with quickness and fluidity, carrying a long, slender blade in one hand. A red banner rising over his back marks him as a leader, and his long white beard marks him as a sage. They prefer melee combat, and they seek out... So these are basically, in the rock, paper, scissors, they will seek out the clothies. But they also will willingly go melee expert. They wear a sashimono banner. That's kind of cool, because they're sort of like... It's kind of weird that they added that samurai element to them. And they also can be bodyguards. A Farseer, Bale Bleakstare, is an example, 14th level shaman. They are the most respected shaman in the Horde, the Farseers, and they often ride great white wolves. What else do we have? Here's a picture of one of them. Their stat block's a little long because they have their spells. One individual stands out among his forces, an old orc with white hair that frames his wizened face and keen eyes that flows in the wind. He wears totems of great power, animal fangs and claws, feathers of fierce birds, and blood-marked leather wrappings from wyverns and dragons. As the allies around him die, he smiles, not out of sadism, but recognition, for spirits are more easily discerned by his aged eyes than the living. They're not dedicated battlefield mages, because they have more visionary powers, and in combat they sit back and summon spirits. Okay, an elite guard is a 10th level warrior. Tall and alert, the orc is clad in well-kept armor with a battle axe at her side and a shield strapped to her left arm, so she's more of a tank. She looks like she's capable of dealing with any threat, and if she weren't, the ivory horn draped around her neck could probably summon a capable force. So they are watchful. They are the ones that are almost kind of like a mixture between warriors and scouts. Typical grunts could be 3rd level orcs with and 1st level warrior stats, because they got to pick up some class, I guess. A +1 breastplate? Wow, I don't know why they have such good armor. He growls, the axe bearer, the short, well-muscled orc clad in a breastplate with a howl of fury in his face. He holds the huge axe high above his head, and he takes powerful strides towards his enemy, bound like an ensorcelled demon to a single purpose, bound to the kill. So when they fight, they rely more on brute force and ferocity than skill. A typical Kodo rider rides a mountain-sized beast, the Kodo. And they consider that the Kodo riders to be one of the deadliest weapons in the Horde, and they beat their orc war drums, which kind of helps with like morale checks. It's hard to see him, the squat figure riding the huge Kodo as it strides across the field, perched on the howdah. He beats a set of drums in a steady rhythm to which the Kodo moves as steadily as a gnomish automaton. A look of confidence is fixed on his face, and with such a great beast beneath him under his control more surely than a spell, who is to say confidence is unwarranted? So it says they guide their beasts. They usually lag behind, and they offer ranged support and beat their drums of courage to basically buff up. Oh, that was a typical grunt. That's why he was a warrior with an axe. Duh. I was mixing him up with a peon who's a 3rd level commoner. Permanently bent from years of labor, the expressionless orc trudges in his duty, a large sack slouched over malformed shoulders that are broader than any soldier's. They're treated with contempt, but they're sturdy little guys, and without them, what could you even do? There are also raiders, which are above grunts. They're like 5th level warriors. They are among the most feared of the Horde because they're fast, basically, and they can use nets to entrap. Howling and barking in harmony with his lupine steed, the wolf rider holds one hand on the reins, the other lifting an evil-looking blade above his head, and at his side, several nets rest on the wolf's flank, ready to be thrown at attractive prey. They're the shock troopers. So what else are you going to say about them? They're in Warcraft 3, they're essential against flying because of their nets. And the final orc force is a typical wind rider. About the same power as a raider, just an air form. They ride the venomous lizards, into huge venomous lizards, which are really wyverns. I don't know that I'd call them a lizard. And they use poison with their weapons. Clad in chainmail and a scaly cloak that matches the color of his steed, the wind rider pulls his reins and shouts a command word that is all but unintelligible except to the steed. The wyvern chafes slightly, but only for a moment. She leaps into the air, stretches out her wings, and beats the air like a great drum as she ascends the sky. They love to swoop and fling javelins, and their javelins are poisonous. Okay, so that's actually most of the forces, because the orcs make up the most of the Horde forces, but we'll look at the other ones too. The Tauren and such. So Tauren, a Tauren hero would be a chieftain, such as Kel Stonebowl, who's level 12 overall, mixed between warrior, gladiator, and Tauren. They possess incredible battle skills, tactics, knowledge of geography. They're smart. And let's see if we can read a description of him. There's a cool picture of him. An aura of strength and wisdom surrounds the powerfully built Tauren. Scars crisscross his grizzled muzzle, and he hefts his heavy halberd in one hand. They favor charge attacks, bull rushes. They have opportunity attacks, and he can use a battle shout to buff them. A Spirit Walker is just a regular enemy, level 6 mixture between Shaman with a Spirit Walker prestige class. They are conduits to communicate with the spirits. They can cast some spells because they're shaman. The Tauren displays a snow-white pelt tinged with silver. While smaller than his companions, his black eyes seem to glow with power. They're basically buff. They're support allies. They focus on buffing their things with bloodlust. They can protect themselves with lightning guardians, which is kind of like the lightning shield we've been using on Warcraft Classic. And they use a lot of healing. Typical Tauren warrior is a 3rd level because they mix in scout levels. And they are good at tracking, foraging, and melee combat. They're calm, self-sufficient, and they fight in small warbands. It says, muscles ripple under this Tauren's brown hide. His compact frame hints at tenacity and endurance, while his scarred armor tells of many past battles. They are calm. They don't lose their head. They're good. They use flanking, cleaving, power attack. All right. Let's read about the Jungle Troll military forces. Okay, so a champion of them could be, for example, a Shadow Hunter like Zul Ross, who is a 12th level mixture between Shadow Hunter Prestige, Jungle Troll levels, and Witch Doctor. They hold place of honor and authority in the Dark Spear tribe. In specific, Zul Ross has dedication to the tribe, and he is an advisor and defender of the ancient ways of the Dark Spear. He has a special connection to the Loa, and that taps into that whole Witch Doctor aspect of him. A wooden mask with stripes of red paint covers the features of this tall troll, making his face a fearsome and expressionless one. Long, colorful feathers cover the shoulders of this veteran's simple leather armor, and he holds a weapon of ancient design in his clenched fist. That weapon is the Fell Glaive. It's the traditional Shadow Hunter weapon, which is the same one that the Night Elves use, except it's a little different looking from... but it's the same stats as a Moonglaive, which is what they use. He's a haughty, confident troll who enjoys tormenting weaker foes. He fights them with melee, but against stronger people, he will use his spells. He usually uses debuff type of spells or buffs up his own allies. A typical Bat Rider is only a 3rd level warrior, so they're weaker than the Flying Orcs. They're perceptive, so they're also scouts. They use blazing torches and fire bombs. A simple leather vest of deep blue studded with teeth of various creatures covers the lean body of this troll, leaving the taut muscles of his pale, sea-hued arms exposed. A thick belt around the creature's waist holds several axes, as well as a simple black scabbard with a short but wide sword. That's probably for fighting air to air. Basically they just fly around and bomb stuff. A typical berserker is a little more powerful than that because they're mixing barbarian and scout and troll levels. They're level 5, so they're about on par with a grunt. They can go into a rage. They fight in small bands and ambush. Many scars mark the light blue skin of this battle-hardened troll. A chain shirt of dark gray covers his muscular torso. The warrior carries several spears which stick out from a specially designed quiver strapped on his back. They get the same training as the headhunters, which we're about to read about, except they use throwing spears and focus on projectile combat. And because of that, they like to use stealth and hide in ambush with that. So the headhunters are a little bit weaker. They're only level 3, more scout than anything else. They do throw spears and they track down quarry. They're just a little bit better about a little bit worse than the fighting, but they're better about sneaking around. This troll wears a well-wrought dark brown chain shirt decorated with small black metal beads. Upon his back is a large pack designed to carry many spears, and their points jut out over the creature's coarse red mane. They basically just attack from afar, and then they will if they're forced into melee, they still throw spears. That's all they do. Okay, typical witch doctors are somewhere in between those. They're more powerful than the headhunters, but not quite as powerful as the ambush ones. They use buffs. We know from the game, from Warcraft 3, they also do some healing. It says, this troll's flaming red hair is turning gray, and a wide golden ring protrudes from his broken nose. Garbed in a simple tunic of soiled brown cloth covered with a battered leather vest, the witch doctor holds a wooden staff. The surface of this weapon is covered with intricate tribal carvings, and a handful of shrunken skulls dangle from a cord tied to it. They remain behind the action, just buffing and healing, basically. Oh, so they are going to give us specific Forsaken forces. I feel like this is probably... This will wrap up the classical ones. They're probably going to toss us a couple ogres and stuff at the end, too. So the Dark Ranger would be their hero, such as they're giving us Anya Eversong because Sylvanas would be OP. She's beyond this, but even a Dark Ranger is a level 15 scout that has prestige Dark Ranger levels. They're basically assassins mixed with scouts, and they fight range. The unsettling undead figure wears a long, shadow-laden cloak, obscuring most of her features and causing her to fade into the darkness. She holds a dark, glowing bow of elven make. They are she's first and foremost a ranged fighter who snipes. She does shoot on the move if she has to, and she can use spells like Charm Person, and can drain life if needed. They also have acolytes. These are third level priests. They repair the buildings. This is basically their peons. They have some spells. An undead man stands dressed in dark robes covered in arcane writing. I didn't realize acolytes were undead. Most of their faces covered, I guess so, because then they can turn into the little ghosts. Is covered in a dark scarf and the hood of his robes as he clutches a wicked heavy-bladed dagger. I also didn't realize they fought with daggers. They're pitiful in battle. They don't really fight. I was gonna say I can't remember ever seeing one fight. They can cast Death Coil. Okay. An apothecary. Here we go. This is our final. So they're not going to do ogres. So we just have these last two military things, and then we're done. So there's the apothecary, which is a witch doctor basically, but they're not really. They're really alchemists. They're support and they use potions. The undead female smirks with supreme confidence as she uncorks the vial from one of her numerous pouches. They don't go to the front lines of battle. They just chuck potions and heal, buff up, and maybe even throw noxious evil potions if they have to. The other side of that would be, if you wanted to have a more offensive focused one, would be the necromancer. That's still an arcanist. Well, I guess it would be an arcanist as opposed to a divine magic caster, 5th level also. They can shoot and provide support, but their main thing is they're raising the dead. It says if you're in a really bloody battle, you can double or triple the forces just by having one around. The undead creature wears a horrible goat skull atop his head, and I didn't realize they were undead, period. I definitely did not think the necromancers were undead, but I guess the Forsaken ones are. I guess that's the difference between Warcraft 3 and this. They bear a withered staff with a miniature goat skull at the top. Love goats for whatever reason. Crimson robes display his magical nature, as does the spellbook he holds in his right hand. They're, again, artillery support. They can buff with Unholy Frenzy, shoot shadow bolts off, and, of course, raise the dead. All right, so that was the synopsis of the military forces of the Horde. We have a couple chapters left, as you saw below. We're going to be looking most likely at a bestiary next time before we wrap it up with some adventures. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. This episode is in the pipe 5x5. I appreciate you. Give it a like, give it a subscribe, share with your friends. No matter what you do, though, I hope to see you next time on Lore of Warcraft.